supporting you during this webinar. Before we start, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You've joined the presentation using your computer speaker system by default. Please do open your webcam, as some of you have, so that we can all see each other. As with our previous webinars in this series, Geoff will be using the breakout rooms, so please be ready to interact with your microphone and camera. The webinar is being recorded and you'll receive a copy of the recording and slides and resources for today's session in the next couple of days. As we use MailChimp for bulk emailing, sometimes emails land in spam or junk, so please check your spam if you don't receive it, in case the email has landed there. We'd like this session to be as interactive as possible and invite you to submit your text questions in the chat box throughout the webinar. You'll find this by hovering over your screen, and a small taskbar will be revealed at the bottom. Please write your name and location in the question pane now so that we know the technology is working for you. It is now my pleasure to introduce your facilitator, Smaranda Dokia, AC, Head of Digital Learning, Events and Conferences.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the third session in the eFIRE Finding Clarity in Complexity webinar series. I am pleased to have you all with us today. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you. I see that many of you have already joined with webcam. We invite all of you to do that if you have the possibility, so we can see you and enjoy such a complex and diverse webinar. We will continue with the interaction. As Sally was saying, we will be doing the breakout room again, so we will be having some discussions, and some of you will probably be able or willing to join us in the conversation later on with Geoff. So not much more on my side, just hello, good evening, Geoff. Happy to have you with us again, and on to you.
Thank you.
We'll be interacting throughout.
Thank you very much, Smaranda, and also thank you, Sally, and it's great to be back. This time broadcasting from Melbourne, and it's a challenge technologically. I'm on a single screen and a small computer, but this is one of the fun things about the virtual world, is that we can be flexible in where we are and how we are, and really keen to sort of work with you in this virtual space and see if we can continue a conversation which we started in the last few weeks. And one of the things about the eFIRE model is one of the assumptions is that the world of work and the world of the leaders that we manage and that we coach, most of the executives at senior levels now are getting very used to this kind of technology and this kind of interaction. Many are working across borders, many are working in different time zones, many are working with co-located or distributed teams. And I really think that as coaches, we have to be in tune with the mindset of the people that we manage or that we coach. So this is just landing our context that the eFIRE model is designed for executives to use with the people that they are managing and coaching, as well as for executive coaches to use. So, and as we started to explore last week, the last webinar, that really more and more we're talking about the mindset that is going with the methodologies of coaching. So for leaders, it's the mindset that they carry rather than the more, I guess, as trained coaches. I think just about everybody here would have some kind of coach training or accreditation. I don't really expect that when people are using the eFIRE model that they need to have had, or that it's likely that they will have had that sort of deep training as pure executive coaches that some of you will have had. So they're really going to be using a lot of natural leadership capacity and capacity to hold conversations. And what we're trying to do with this model is give them a way in and a way of thinking about coaching people that enables them to be effective without the skill necessarily, or the micro skills that executive coaches might carry. And in presenting at conferences about leadership coaching, there is this fundamental question that many executive coaches are consciously and maybe subconsciously threatened by the fact that their skill and their expertise can be conducted by a leader without too much formal accreditation and training. And it does ask some questions of the industry about how that could well work. And certainly be very happy to enter into discussion about some of that as we go. I'm interested in keeping track of your questions, but I really would like Smiranda to help me with that tonight, because I'm going to be struggling to see the chat on this screen. Now, next challenge technologically is to put up the slideshow. Let's go. Okay. So tonight, just to look at this idea of systemic inquiry and playing with what's possible. This is when we get into the inquiry state, which we started last week, and also with the possibility and reflecting back on possibility state. So using eFIRE, perhaps to unpack a picture, and thank you for the people that have sent us pictures, and starting to get a sense of people playing a little bit with the ideas behind eFIRE. And this idea of taking a pictorial exploration of an organizational system. So we might ask a couple of those people to talk. If they don't want to, that's fine. Or we might show one of the pictures just to give you a bit of a sense of what's there, and maybe use that as a possible entry point for a discussion in the breakout rooms. I'd like to start to speak a little about coaching cultures, because I think that the context of leadership is very much around driving these kinds of things that we call coaching conversations into organizations through leadership practice, not to devalue the role that we as executive coaches play, but position leaders at the front line of doing coaching conversations. And I mentioned last time the work of Dave Snowden and the Cynefin framework, which examines different kinds of problem situations, and particularly looking at the explosion, I guess, of what could be called complex problems in organizations that are not open to hard systems inquiry, that do a more soft systems inquiry and multiple perspectives, and not looking for solutions, but looking to influence the system. And the first line of inquiry there is around probing. This idea of getting in amongst the system and look for points of influence, which is where we'll go a little bit tonight, or I guess this morning in your part of the world. And just reminding you of the model, this is the eFIRE model. We looked at energy, that central purpose that people have in their life. You know, I was doing a session today with managers, sales managers in the automotive industry, and three of the questions we asked them is, the first question is, who are you? The second question was, what do you do? And the third question is, why do you matter? And that third question is very much around that energy question, to ask us, you know, or ask our leaders, why do they matter? Why do they turn up? What would happen if they weren't there? And that is around the values, the purpose, the relationships that drive us in our work and in our coaching. Reminding you this non-linearity, we move around the model. We're not stuck in any one state. We can move from state to state as we shift with our conversations, and we encourage the people that we're coaching to use this kind of thinking, to listen carefully to the executives we're coaching. How well are they? How good are they at moving backward and forward in the different states that we've identified in the model? It's emergent. As coaches, we're constantly listening for things and inquiring about what people are noticing that's emerging from the system. As we're in that state of inquiry, what's emerging that wasn't expected, that could be made use of in exploring and influencing the system. Intentional, going deeper than goals into deeper intentions related to the energy center experiment or the system of play. Tonight, we're playing a little bit with a different system, a little bit of a technological play. We're experimenting. If something doesn't work, that's okay. If something doesn't work, we know that doesn't work. We try something that does. And systemic, we're really looking at the systemic nature of organizations, the interrelationships that happen in systems, multiple levels, the level of the individual, the level of the team, and the level of the organization. And it's for messy context. It's not for everything. And that mindset trumps method. Mindset trumps method. Playing around with this during the week about trying to get a handle on what the mindset's really about here, because this is not entirely clear. I did some thinking and called on our friend Albert Einstein around this. And when he was asked about how do I work, he says, I grope. I grope. And I was thinking how that relates a little bit to the work of Dave Snowden in the Sniffen framework about probing. So it's this idea that we don't know where these answers are, and encouraging our leaders who are often engineers, they're bankers, they're industrialists, they're people with very hard systems education, to get this idea of not knowing, of going a little bit into the blind and groping around to try and find a way that's going to get them some traction. And there's everything has an acronym if we want it to have. And I want to look at this idea of growth we've talked about last time, of reflective practice of curiosity, reflecting about what we don't know all the time, constantly curious, being open in our mind and being less reactive. You can't be as human beings, we tend to react, but the coaching mindset is one of being open to whatever's coming and not to be so concerned about the fact that what's coming is not what we want. So we've got to work with what we've got. And pragmatic, that there's more than one way, is very much around this mindset that goes behind the model. And ethical, doing the right thing, of playing from values in the center of so our thanks to Albert Einstein and the idea of groping in coaching, which I'm sure is a different concept to you introduced tonight. Reminding you again, this idea of the formal organization and what our leaders who we coach deal with, the reality of the organizational mess. And in this state of inquiry, we've introduced last week the idea of the rich picture, but it's not, and I might come off the stop sharing for a moment. So we're really looking at a systems inquiry, a soft systems inquiry, where a lot of different ways of seeing the world are at play. And this is where the eFIRE model is informed by a multiple perspectives reality of the world, that we encourage our leaders to look at things from the points of view of different people. And if you look at many of the questions, many of the questions in eFIRE do is draw in perspectives of people who aren't in the room. And this is a not uncommon coaching practice, but it's really very important when you're dealing in these organizational environments which do have different stakeholders, and increasing diversity in stakeholders. And we talked a little bit about cross-border interactions, of takeovers, of mergence between different cultures. It's very, very important that we find ways when we're coaching our leaders and inquiring about how leaders are coaching others, just going back to that point of we are looking to model something that can go one step back into the organizational system directly. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to be asking the questions that we're asking of them using this kind of thinking. So let's go back to our show again. I'm quite good at this. Okay. So with this idea of these soft systems rather than hard mechanical systems, you can think of the difference between, one of the examples is between the difference between a human organizational system and say an A380, an aeroplane that's incredibly complex or complicated. The difference is in an aircraft, when something goes wrong, you have to find the right bit, fix it, and then the aircraft will be fine. In organizations and in the sorts of problems we're talking about, it's not about one bit. It's about the interrelationships of the bits and the way that different things are happening as a result of those interactions. But we can be confident when we're working in this mindset that if we can look at the system in a different way, if we can think carefully as in our state of inquiry and even in our framing, and when we're looking at reflecting back on possibilities, we're always mindful of where we can influence, where we can grope, if you like, or probe, and find a way in that's going to push a little bit of the system somewhere, which may, if we're lucky, have a positive influence in another part of the system. So if you look at some of these inquiry questions, there's a lot of this kind of fluidness in the nature of the questions. And we had a bit of a look at this last time, but if you have a look at some of those questions, you can see that there are almost every single question has embedded in it an understanding that there isn't one way to look at these things. You know, if you look at even in question 4, which is a very simple question, who has power in the system, in the situation, including the power to get resources? A question about power. Really getting people to think about the nature of power in an organization and the different people that might hold it, and get a conversation going around 2 concepts. One is, what does power mean, and what sort of forms are there, and who holds it, and what are their views? So you're getting right away, you're igniting through these questions an organizational, systemic and cultural inquiry without actually calling it that. And question 7, when you look at the challenges, what metaphor comes to mind? What might be another one that's contrasting, that brings the ideas to fore? So we touched on some of these last time. Question 9, what are the different cultural perspectives that might be involved? Who are the supporters, opposers? Is there anything that seems to be emerging that wasn't expected? These are all questions that are playing with the idea of organizational mess. And the question 14, and I want to come back to this next in this final webinar, it's what are the apparently conflicting, paradoxical forces, ideas and perspectives that seem to be in play? Now, if there's one question that calls complexity into the conversation, it's that one. In individuals, in teams, and in organizations, there are inevitably different forces that come into play that appear to be, at first glance, contradictory, and they can line up in conflict. And I'll just come out of this again here. They can be in conflict. And you'll find in organizations a typical one, which you'll see at play in any of your coaching conversations, if you get a little bit beneath the surface, if you're working with executives, is the conflict between making the world go around now, in terms of making the profit, making the system work, getting things done, getting the outcome that you need, meeting the client expectations now, on the one hand. On the other hand, building for the future in a time of rapid change. In other words, there's a constant in the current environment as things move quickly, as markets shift. And I spent the day with the automotive industry. This is very, very typical of the way they're working. Things that make you successful today are going to be causing you grief tomorrow because they're no longer going to be of value to you. You have to look at the quick demise of DVDs, so in DVD shops, and of different kinds of technologies that have fallen to pieces, and the introduction of Uber as being a change that's made something that was very profitable one day very unprofitable the next day. So people are making these constant choices. You hear the expression like sweat the asset. How do I make money out of what I've got, knowing that I'm going to have to destroy it? And people have an energy, like an emotional attachment to what's present. And as a leader, and as a coach when you're working with leaders, that part of your role is to help them destroy something that's made them successful. And people are very reluctant to do it. So I'm moving my hands. There's a whole series of studies of this, the ambidextrous organization, where on the one hand, you're looking to explore the future. On the other hand, you're looking to exploit the current situation. So this is only one of the inherent paradoxes that live in organizational life. At an individual level, in teams, you find the conflict between individual identity of people wanting to retain who they are when they come to a team. And that's their hope. But at the same time, they must give some of that up in order for them to be effective in the team and the group. So you've got, again, a paradoxical relationship between the individual and the group that's working at play. So, it also works within us. If I look at myself, I can take it to an individual level and line up that, on one hand, I like to be professional. On the other hand, I like to be relaxed. I like to be a relaxed professional, but those two things come into tension. And when the balance is out, then sometimes that doesn't play out well, because each of those paradoxes has a shadow. Each of those sides has a shadow side that can be not of service. If I become too relaxed, I become a little bit lazy. If I become too professional, I become too perfectionist. And if I put those two together, instead of being a relaxed professional, I become a lazy perfectionist, which is not a particularly good space to be. So this works at individual levels, it works at team levels, it works at organizational levels, and in your coaching with this mindset of the eFIRE model, you've got to be looking for those and probing around to see, groping around in the system to see what's at play. Let's go back in here again. Right, I'll just pause a little and just going to have a look at some rich pictures at the minute, but maybe some questions as we just pause a little. I've got to spend a lot of time in the last few minutes just sort of positioning the conversation, but I'm wondering if there's any questions that are coming through as we go. And please feel free simply to turn your mic on. Any thoughts as I'm talking? Please feel free to come in. Okay. Miranda, anything coming through on the chat at the moment? Okay, we'll keep going. Amanda very kindly shared with us a picture, but we're not going to share the picture because Amanda's mentioned that this was a client picture. But I'm wondering, Amanda, if you're there, whether you're prepared to say a little bit about the process of that, as to what happened for you when you were doing that.
Sure. Jeff, just checking on the time. Is it midnight for you in Australia?
What is it? 11:20.
Wow. Well, I'm very impressed by your energy. I'm not sure I'd have it quite this late at night. So I'm Amanda Scott. I'm based on the west coast of Ireland, and I've been running a company with an academic in the UK in the last couple of years, where we've developed a very simple network tool that we find people in organizations find very helpful, because it helps them to visualize and think about the network of relationships that help them both deliver today, in your words, Jeff, and also open up new possibilities so that they can develop in the future. And you're absolutely right, there is a tension between those two. I was really interested to have a go at the rich picture to try to describe a relationship with a client at the moment. It's a utility company, and a program of work that we have done in the last couple of months, where we introduced this quite personal network framework. When I did that, one of the challenges for me was I hate drawing. So I immediately felt I naturally write with my left hand, and it was as if somebody had put a pen into my right hand and asked me to do something with it. So I immediately felt like my younger self, a little bit inadequate. And when I started to look at a blank page and think about what drawing I would put on it, I probably stared at it for about 20 minutes and absolutely nothing came. So I found myself making some small drawings in one corner. And my energy for this activity went from being kind of questioning at the beginning to suddenly getting an idea, suddenly working on it quite fast, then being very overwhelmed and not knowing how to link up the various elements in the drawing. What I was trying to do was to draw out the different actors in the system. So our client, who would be a head of learning and development, who brought us in to do this work. So I tried to describe her situation. And I think in the end, when I finished it and sent it to Jeff, I really couldn't see how he would make any sense of it without me narrating over the top of it. So Jeff, my experience is that these drawings done in isolation are only really of so much value, that they seem to be inherently a collaborative exercise. And that if I had tried to draw this with my colleague in the UK, or I had drawn this with my client in the company, if the three of us had been able to work on it together, it's the conversation that we would have had afterwards that would have really helped to flesh out, as you described, some of the hard things and some of the soft things that might be helping us to evaluate whether the intervention, the introduction of this model is effective inside the organization.
So Amanda, that's very kind of you to share that story. And just to talk a little bit about the method, when I'm using it, there's several ways. One is if I'm working in a team, to encourage each of the members of the team to do their individual picture and to have those pictures shared so they can compare and contrast, and they often notice the similarity, even though there may be great differences in the team. There will be similarities and differences that will be raised, and different metaphors. And I know in your picture there were some powerful metaphors and powerful connections that you could see straight away. And as a coach, and particularly, I remember in Central America, I had a banking CEO walking around the different tables looking at the way that his team had been drawing his bank. And he was fascinated. He was asking questions, he was interacting and really coaching as he went. Even though we hadn't skilled him up in coaching, he started to ask questions. They were coaching questions. So it distances people from the actual issue, and they can see it. They step back. It's part of that. When you're looking at possibility, you can start to line up areas of the picture that could be potentially points of interest. And what you're doing there in terms of that methodology is you're being holistic. You're putting the mess consistent with the eFIRE methodology and complexity and systems thinking. You're putting it very simply into one landscape. What you then do is look at that with other people, ideally. If you've got an individual exploration, then you can do that. And to have a conversation about which bit of that is most likely to add some positive influence, again, a bit of a values judgment as well. Where in that picture can you see possibility that you can then become holistic and reductionist by grabbing that piece out, but not with the same idea of an A380, but with a human system, and look at repositioning that subsystem back in a way that will influence the rest of the system, and then watch emergence as the interrelationships start to work. So you're then going back into a process and going back to examining the impact that you've had. But I think what you said is very insightful, that a picture on its own, although, I don't know, you mentioned that just seeing the picture without the narrative. One exercise I do with groups of executives is get them to do exactly that. Draw the picture, show it to someone else, and just get that person who's doesn't even know the issue to have a look at what they see. And it's amazing how insightful that is, because in Jungian terms, these pictures, when you draw them, surface things unconsciously that you never thought of before. And I have to ask, Amanda, that picture behind you, that's a very lovely image.
Oh, it's a photograph, actually. It's a photograph taken in Scotland of a fishing boat. And yeah, it's rather nice. It's the only thing in the picture. Yeah. So yes, so to come back, Jeff, I sent it to you without any explanation, or I think I probably sent you our company website, so I gave you a bit of background information. Yeah. But and you came back, and I think what I really enjoyed about your communication was, you know, email can be very flat, but you just demonstrated immediate curiosity, which is quite infectious. And you asked me, you know, where the problem might show up in the picture. And of course, that was the bit that I probably avoided looking at. So it was very descriptive of the situation, but it wasn't really zeroing in on a problem area. And I found that really helpful. And it really made me, I did do another picture, but I decided not to send it to you because I actually thought it was almost too revealing at that stage. What I love about these pictures is that, you know, they're kind of no holds barred. They really encourage you to describe emotions and all sorts of things. So even I went at it with a degree of openness, which I then thought afterwards, no, actually, we'd be careful about, you know, who looks at this. So so there you are in Australia, and here I am in Ireland. I showed you a piece of paper with some drawings on. You asked me one or two questions about it, which immediately helped me to go back to that piece of work. So, and I'm quite sure if I'd sent you a 5-page document, it would have been much more kind of linear and a bit dull to read, but I'm not sure it would have got you as curious as showing you, you know, my 51-year-old scribbles.
Okay, so thank you very much, Amanda, for that. It's really very generous of you to come in, so thank you very much. But perhaps anybody, would you have any questions? Just listening to the conversation, very happy to take some questions. Okay, well, we'll push on a little bit. I'll go back to that PowerPoint. So, share screen, and seem to have lost the slide. And this is another picture. This one I don't know anything about, except that it's been provided very generously by Paul. And I think we might just have a look at that, and let's see if we can do this. What I'd like you to do is to just have a look at that in groups of 2 or 3 and spend a couple of minutes just exploring and probing and groping around in there to see what you can see in this somewhat cryptic but very interesting. I'm fascinated by some of the images and some of the connections and some of the subsystems and the way that that's working. So we're not trying to work out exactly what this story is, but to look at some of the ways in which things are showing up and be a little bit curious. And let's spend just time it at 5 minutes in the breakout rooms and small groups. And let's see if you can use your inquiring minds and curiosity and groping mindsets to have a go. So stay tuned. Remembering with this system, you'll get a little invitation to join the breakout room. I'm going to time it for 5 minutes, and then the room will automatically dissolve and bring you back into the 8. Let's try that. Okay, the rooms are opening, so please see if we can go in. So I've got us timed at 5 minutes. So just accept the invitation, and it will. Okay, Nadine, how are you going? Sure, Nadine's still there, but everybody else is in the breakout rooms. Rodrigo, you're struggling a little bit there. Rodrigo, I think I can hear you if you talk.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can.
Oh, I don't participate with more intensity because sometimes I feel a little bit unconfident about my English.
Okay, Rodrigo, that's fair enough. I know talking with you that your English is quite strong, so I don't understand your reluctance, but oops, join breakout. I better go and help somebody in breakout rooms. Mute. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Somehow I think I've managed to mute you. Can you unmute yourselves? Oh, that's okay. Yeah, you can unmute. Maybe just a couple of thoughts there, if you could. And I'm sorry if I rudely interrupted your conversations.
We had
Yeah.
we had a good go at trying to remember what the picture looked like, so that was useful. So we didn't get the picture, but we did remember it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. What didn't happen was that the share screen didn't go into all the rooms, which I'll have to look at being the technology of that. But what I'll do.
It's okay, because we saw some things, like if I was wandering around the chief exec and I saw a big void hole at the top and people wandering off in the corner looking extremely depressed, it would make me think quite heavily of the questions that I might want to ask. But I was thinking about asking positive and negatives, because you could be just drawn to the negative questions all the time. You need to look at the balance on the picture.
There was an exciting possibility there, wasn't there? If you're looking at positive growth, and I'll just bring that up again. If you look at the look at that picture, there is all sorts of possibility there. But as you say, initially, I think the word David was using when we were chatting was confusion, and I was fascinated by a number of things in there. But it's got some interesting possibilities. But yeah, it's a very powerful image. I don't know, Paul, whether you want to say anything. Are you wanting to come in there at all?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was a bit reluctant when you asked me about would I say anything about it, but it's actually where I find myself now, and thinking in terms of where next. So I was down the left-hand side is me. I'm a kind of a trainer and work with teams. There's my one-to-one coaching. My art is not good. What I enjoy is designing stuff, and I enjoy working with people. The bit I hate, and probably just about everybody here would go along with it, is all that stuff about putting proposals together and all the admin stuff, you know. So I hate that. That sort of sticks over me. But what I'm also conscious of is because I put so much into my work, I'm conscious of coming back to, I'm sorry, I missed your name, about that notion of a void there. I'm sure that there is something missing, but I don't know what it is.
So Paul, if I could just come in there, because it's just very generous of you to share this. As a tool, this is a very, very easy thing to use, and automatically starts people to get into the emotional centers and the energy centers of what they're on about. It's a very powerful way of really unpacking, and you've used it at an individual level, and you can also use it as at a systemic level as well. So thank you very much for doing that.
Can I just say, Geoff, say that I raised the topic here in what was now a very small group about, you know, I also work with people like you've suggested, maybe people who've come up from an engineering background to become, you know, very senior managers. Can be quite hard-nosed, very logical, and I would find myself thinking in terms of a lot of the people that I have coached, I would have to choose very carefully to actually say to them, let's draw a picture of what this situation.
Right. Yep.
It would almost seem, I would imagine, frivolous.
It's funny how quickly people get over that, I'd have to say. In my working with the military, of working with all sorts of different industries and people, how extraordinary it is, how quickly people are able to get into the conversation and be very powerful in that. Just hang on. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, well, I'll just keep going to sort of move us along a little bit. It draws in metaphors. There's a lot of multiple perspectives. We're then looking at being reductionist and holistic, looking at areas of the picture that we can influence. and maximizing interaction effects. Which bit can we play with that has the most impact in the system? We're then moving, into, as we get to the end of the webinar, we're moving into this reflective state of what's possible. And these are fairly common questions. What I really would encourage in this mindset is one of play. It's very easy to get caught up in very, very serious conversations about the meaning of life and forget that really at this point you can just throw things up in the air and have a game. The one I really like, questions like, this is an incisive question. If you've did the webinar some time ago around the thinking environment, it's an incisive question. If there were no constraints, what would you do right now? You take away the constraint and then ask the question. There's another one there, one of my favorite ones. What would you love to try just to see what happens? It again gets people into a mindset of play. And when they answer it, generally it's something that people actually prepared to have a go at or a form of it. So it's really throwing this thing up in the air. It'll also take you back. It's non-linear. It'll take you back into further inquiry. It'll take you back into reframing the situation. It'll certainly take into energy because it'll ask you what's the one that gives you the most energy. So this is where this is going. Looking at, again, eFIRE as a leadership coaching tool, the idea is to get this mindset, get this methodology into organizations. And Paul used an individual analysis. Amanda was using more of an organizational analysis. You can also use a team analysis. So when you're thinking about a culture and you're thinking about an organization, eFIRE calls you to think about the individual, the team, the departments, the organization, vertical relationships, horizontal relationships, working across silos, working up and down levels in hierarchies. It encourages inquiry across and up and down the system. And this, I'm not sure if you had a go at this last time, but I will really ask you to have a go this in between webinars, is go onto that link and have a go at inquiring about some organization or a bit of an organization that you're familiar with, and go in and have a go at that coaching culture questionnaire. And this is work of David Clutterbuck and David Megginson from a long time ago, which we've brought up to date a little bit with some more recent research. But it looks at, you can measure to what extent a coaching culture is nascent, which means they're not going to be using eFIRE. They're not having the conversations they need to have. In tactical, people are starting to have coaching kinds of conversations and they're starting to address some issues. In strategic, they're really starting to get into this idea of everybody being in coaching, but maybe it's not fully embedded. And the last one is everybody in the organization is able to have a coaching kind of conversation. And that's really, it's not necessarily a good thing to be embedded. It just is where you are and how does it serve you where you happen to be. It may be that your organization only needs to be at a tactical level. Maybe the nature of the organization is that rich, deep conversations about messy problems isn't needed. But more and more, the reality is that you do need to have those conversations. So this little survey, the most important thing is not so much the results, it's the thinking as you answer the question. It's the thinking as you're answering those questions. What does that bring to mind about what's possible in the organization? So again, it's the power of the question rather than necessarily thinking, well, I wish we were there. In fact, it doesn't matter where you are. Where you are is where you are. But if you set an intention, which is different from where you are, then you've got some leverage and some energy to play with. And, this idea of, at the organizational level, I'll just touch on this rather than go into strong detail as we're, and that's good. At an organization level, you want to see where coaching is sitting in this organizational leadership coaching approach. Is it in the strategic plan? Is it embedded in management systems, recruitment, in the vision, in formal leadership approaches? Are there agreed definitions, models, and frameworks? Is the model of coaching that's being used in the organization actually fit for purpose? Is it eFIRE is fit for organizational purposes of a particular kind? Is it in the culture? What are the values of the organization? Are they at play? Are they consistent with coaching? What are the symbols? What are the heroes of coaching in the organization? Maybe the leadership heroes are models of coaches, or maybe they're not. This is what you're looking for. And are there champions that are modeling the way of coaching? Are there stories about successful coaching interventions? These are some of the things that when you've got this stuff moving, you're looking for to see what's working and what's not. If you take it to the individual level, you've got, and is an individual working to a job description and being rewarded in a way that encourages coaching? Is our coaching mindset viewed positively? Or is it seen as some kind of sort of outlier in the organization? Are individuals encouraged to link their behavior to values? Are they undertaking when you go in the organization, are peers coaching each other? Are people in corridors having coaching kinds of conversations? Is there training available for individuals? Are people mentoring each other, and are people encouraged to mentor people and to be mentored by someone? And are there executive coaches being used in different ways? So this is an individual manifestation. At the group and the team level, are leaders coaching teams, and are executive coaches coming in to help the team in the development of performance? Is group coaching being used in the organization? Are executive coaches working with groups? Are there sort of semi-autonomous groups working in a coaching mindset? These are all aspects of a coaching culture. And as I say, the eFIRE approach is it's not right or wrong. What you're doing is surfacing what is going on. Then you can start to influence it in a way that's relevant to the organizational players that are there. Just in the last couple of minutes, any questions at this point? Let's go back into the stop share. And yeah, any questions at this point? There's a lot of stuff coming at you. I'm just curious to know what you're thinking. Anybody? Somebody?
It'd be good for your own self-development if you saw that model, because whatever level you're at, you can see what are good behaviours and see how you could introduce them. So if you wanted to manage upwards or something like that, you've got all that checklist there.
Yeah, and different. It also enables you to, when you use the coaching, that little survey instrument, it'll give you a sense of, if you've got sort of 4 or 5 different people in the organization doing the survey, you'll find that they get different answers. So even though you've got the same organization, the perspectives of it differ. Like I've used it in the Graduate School of Business at QUT. And when we did it, there was some people thought we were nascent. In other words, there was nothing, even though I'm the director of coaching, which is a bit scary. But then others thought it was strategic or tactical. Others thought it was strategic, and others thought it was embedded. And they're all working in the same organization of 40 people, all having meetings together, all having completely different views of what was going on. And interestingly enough, it was kind of correlated hierarchically. The further up the chain I asked, the more people thought there was an embedded coaching culture. So you sort of think, what's going on there? But maybe at the bottom end, people weren't feeling the love, if you know what I mean. So this is something to be mindful of. But if you're playing in this space of encouraging leaders to coach, and this is where we started the conversation this evening, if we are in the business of modeling coaching for people, providing models to them that they can use, is to be very, very interested and curious about what is the context within which they're going to start doing this stuff, because they can get very disappointed very quickly if everybody around them thinks that they're something of an alien species. So partly this is about opening up the conversations for them about what kind of organization serves them, how might they use coaching in an appropriate way. But you are, as executive coaches, models for these conversations. And as you are coaching people, this is where I'm more and more moving into the space of when I'm coaching people is to ask them about how are they having conversations with other people. So a constant modeling of what's going on. Let's go back to the last couple of slides, except I've lost them. Let's see. There we go. So next time, have a go at that. Have a go at that. It really is important in terms of understanding this, that you get in and try a few things, have a bit of a play. And next week, we'll sort of E-week, we'll have a look at next 2 weeks, is to encourage this idea of thinking about experimentation and execution. How do you land this thing, knowing when you're having a coaching conversation and a coaching process, that a lot of what you do is still exploratory, that even though you want to go in with strong intention and you want to execute with intentional action, you do know that what the people are doing is not necessarily going to have the impact that they expect. So again, it's being very, very fluid and flexible in the way that your mindset works in this. And talking a little bit next week about the ethical side of this. We have a researcher who's just finished his PhD. He's a very experienced manager in the financial services sector, who's just finished his PhD in ethics. And his view is that training senior managers about ethics is a waste of time. Because even though all of these companies that have been, many of them have been very unethical in their behavior, many of those companies have very good ethics training. It's just that training something, his thesis is about why do good people do bad things, and what are some of the pressures on people to behave against their values and against the ethics of the company, even though there's plenty of evidence that there's training around to remind them. In the eFIRE approach, it's possible to ask some questions in the moment of decision making in the coaching process that bring an ethics conversation into the room. So I might talk a little bit about that next time that we meet. Just have a look at the chat room. Okay, good. So I'll again put in the slides for you to have a copy of and also be recording the last one if you can't come in. But you've also got my email, so if you want to ask any questions in between, by all means, please do. And again, thank you very much for your participation. I'll just bring us all back on screen. It's great to see more and more faces each time that we do this. And thank you for engaging. And maybe if there's one last question before the end. I suppose do some of that PhD. The ethics. Yeah, I'll have a. I don't know if Alistair's published anything yet on that. I might ask him if he has. We might do a little session where a video of him might be possible to get a copy of. I'll have a chat with him during the week. Yeah. Okay, so that would appear to be the end of our session this evening. So thank you for your engagement and look forward to working with you next time. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Geoff. It was a very good session. And thank you everyone for engaging, for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.
Great. Okay.
Thanks, Geoff.
Bye.
Thanks, Geoff. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.